was,
Yeah, no, that would be fine.
that's what I drew on here.
Not have that on the docket tonight.
I mean, that's what I do.
Look at there.
Well, it's fine. We look at different stuff.
Yeah, so that's what else is like.
Gotcha. I told you.
If it's running long, I'll just, stop and film this, since you're letting people in.
Right.
So,
All that stuff.
Yeah.
practicing.
It's not like it hasn't ever been.
No, they've been practicing too, she's pretty excited about it.
How do you know that?
Kindergarten graduation next year. And the little 5-year-old got a little skit, or a little part in the skit, and it's pretty cute.
Oh, my daughter graduated this week from high school. Graduation, well, we didn't have a party yet. We went to University of Minnesota. He's been at this in
Sophistication.
4. For she graduated, she wants to do law.
Brick.
Social justice. So I saw that they
Here's the-
Yeah, right.
You feel really good about it. You
But you
feel
feel
really good
great.
about it, but don't look at the bank account.
I know, but we were kind of.
So we'll see, you know, that'll change that time.
Kind of like, village employee.
Hey, come on.
But you feel really good about it.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Well played, well played.
All right, we'll just wait for Kelly to get back.
Just printing out the reports, recent.
Yeah, Will and Eric, were you on now?
I saw it, but I didn't. I saw it. Beautiful, beautiful.
Hey, Bill.
Probably the other one.
She left her. It's because of somebody's missing. It was like, you see that, but, so, if you don't have a fancy,
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, you did have the right one.
Terry Jo.
Sure.
So,
Maybe a setting in your laptop that you have to be enabled.
Was it 1 or 2? I don't know.
No, well, it's 2 now.
Check the settings on your source codes.
So usually this is your top, if you display this function key. See that?
Is that a 3?
Yes,
Do you need another? I don't need one, I have our.
Okay, whatever you're trying to do,
You think this?
whichever one, whether you want to drag something to it.
Did you want?
No, you gotta do the duplicate.
Yes.
Okay. You don't have,
Saturday.
you're going,
Saturday.
Oh, now which one is it on?
We're going to Charleston. Yeah.
oh, okay.
And Anna and Charleston. It's good.
I know.
New laptop. First time connecting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Punch it right now.
All right, we're gonna call this to order here. Start out with roll call. Commissioner Mecca. Here. Commissioner Ficko. Here. Trustee Renner.
Here.
Planner Shinsky.
Yeah.
President Lysak here. Clerk Kellner. Here. Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
And Commissioner Zumbrowski.
Here.
Commissioner Howdy Shell's out. We also have Fire Marshal Rock, Elizabeth Smith, Crony, and James Rowland. Item 2, consideration and approval of minutes from April 22nd, 2021, regular meeting of the Planning Commission.
Make a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, old business, A. Patterson spelled wrong a couple times.
Yeah, that first, below A, the first paragraph, is a little hard to follow.
Yeah, it seems like some grammar cleanup there.
She advised Cation to have proposed work that they would like to do, that DNR agreed Cation to changes, I think. DNR agreed to changes, take Cation out there.
Just small stuff.
And what are they asking? DNR wants Cation to begin to stimulate the pond?
My kitchen maybe.
I don't think that's the right word.
Yeah, what's the flock, what do you call it?
Yeah,
Flocking, whatever we're supposed to do?
I'm not sure what it is.
It's good.
To finish the project. It's not stimulating.
No, to begin, well, they were gonna, put in the outfall and, emergency spillway. And grading at the
That's
brook.
why if you do it tomorrow, Kelly will be here. and you guys do it for
Yeah,
us.
I don't know, I couldn't follow it. It was-
Okay, I'll read the list for the thing, I can figure it out.
It was about, yeah, they had to put in an emergency spillway and they had to grade,
Keep that in mind.
and the downstream of the discharge pipe. Yeah, that helps.
Below B, I have some of the same things, that questions were due about the septic, or questions were done about the septic tank. I assume that it's supposed to be asked. And just below that, he advised the reason they were adding this is so if someone can wash their car they want to. That just-
We wanted to wash their
Yeah,
car?
if they wanted to wash their car, they could, something like that.
Okay.
It just, to me, I don't know,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, that kind of.
At the end of C, three C, oh, sorry, 4C, related to the development agreement and deed restrictions. It Does 20 Sense explain all the deed restrictions that are one, the development agreement and deed restrictions? I guess I'm not sure what that's supposed to say. So,
Thank you.
those are all the notes I have.
Yeah, me too.
I'll make a motion to approve them as amended.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Can you approve these if she has to go back and fix the occasion part, the part about the pond?
No, I think it's no different than the amendments we just talked about verbally.
Right?
So we can approve them as amended. She just has to give me the final copy that I can post online.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, old business. Village staff / officials review, discussion, status update to the planning commission regarding the Cajun Phase 2 fill project. The property is located at approximately and surrounding South 72 West 23085 National Avenue in the Zone B3 General Business District. And the clerk just gave everybody the latest inspection report from this week. Naomi, any,
Well, it looks like they did the grade, I haven't been on it this one, but the grading was done on the spillway, per plan, and the grading was done downstream of the outfall per plan. So waiting for that to stabilize and take hold. And then as you can see on some of the notes from Will, there's areas that need to be overseeded and continued watering, so those can be established. Their conditional use permit is coming up end of June to be expired. So that's the deadline to get everything completed.
At this point, is there any concern that they don't have enough time, or what's left seems achievable?
Depends on the
kind
day.
of, yeah, as I say, it's kind of weather dependent, but I did send out to Cajun, which is in your packet, a copy of it, just giving him his quote-unquote 30-day warning. And if it's not, fully stabilized by June 28th, that we will take care of it for him. All we're really waiting for is a little more grass to grow. They keep seeding, and we've had good weather, so I'm hoping the next report in 2 weeks shows even better pictures.
Yep.
Bill's exact words was, "The site has not looked this good ever."
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it looked good. There's some areas on top, they have the top plateau, which is not a concern for discharge, but it needs to be stabilized before we can sign off. I think that's kind of the place where they're not putting a lot of attention, but they need to by the end of the month, or by the end of June, so.
Anything else?
That'll expire.
Any questions? Moving along. Item 4, new business. A, review, discussion, and possible approval of a waiver to the sign code requirements of the zoning code in order to place a pole sign within the vision setback triangle formed at the northeast corner of Milwaukee Avenue and State Highway 164, and also within the required 10-foot sign setback requirements from Milwaukee Avenue. The applicant is Chad Richards of Expect More Signs on behalf of property owner Marudi LLC. The property is located at South 91 West 22950 Milwaukee Avenue in the Zone B1 Downtown Business District.
Right, so what they have is on this corner lot over here, they have a couple of different restrictions that impact the potential for placement of a sign. One is in the ordinary part of the zoning code with respect to parking and vision clearance triangles. They have a 30-foot triangle that should ordinarily be respected as a clear space where nothing gets placed to ensure proper visibility to pedestrians and autos queued at that intersection. So in the sign code, it says that signs must respect that. And in the sign code, it also says that freestanding signs have to be at least 10 feet back from all property lines. So that would be from the Milwaukee Avenue right-of-way line and from the Highway 164 right-of-way line. So on a map that I included in your packets, I showed that 30-foot triangle, if that were going to be imposed. And then I also showed the 10-foot setback from Highway 164 and the 10-foot setback from Milwaukee Avenue. And the yellow or orange X represents approximately where the applicant would actually like to place their sign, okay? So that placement would require a waiver of the sign code under the Planning Commission's review and approval of both the sign code standard to comply with vision clearance triangles and the sign code standard to be at least 10 feet back from both property lines, both of those front lot lines. The sign itself, with respect to the size and the overall height, are in accordance with the village's sign code. Also with respect to quantity, this would be the only freestanding sign on the site, with the exception of the temporary A-frame type signs that are in and out of there routinely. It really becomes a question for the commission about whether you feel like this would be overcrowding at that particular corner, owing to what you can see is already in place there. If you drive by, you can really pick up on the location of the street lighting, the traffic lighting posts, the traffic information signs. There's a lot going on at that intersection. But they also would like the opportunity to get better visibility, especially as you're coming down 164. So with all of that said, I really do have to just give it over to the Planning Commission for discussion and consideration. I had a number of conditions that I would recommend you would attach if you're inclined toward an approval tonight. Number one, that the sign would be set back less than, and I need an absolute figure to be filled in there so that when Jason gets the sign permit, he knows how many feet are being approved, right? Is it 5 feet, is it 6 feet? How far back is that going to be? So in condition 1, we would need that information filled in. Condition 2, that the illumination standards, because this is going to be a full color LED. And I did talk with the applicant's sign rep who's here tonight, Chad Richards, and he indicates that this sign does have full illumination intensity control, meaning that it can be dialed back and dialed back up again. So, for instance, those dusk to dawn or after hours, after business hours, it can be reduced in intensity. But condition number 2 says that at all times it must comply with the illumination standards for signs set forth in the code. Number 3, that if approved, this would be the only freestanding sign allowed on the site. Condition 4, that it would have a pole width never to exceed 8 inches in width and painted black to match the cabinet as proposed. Number 5, that there would be issuance of a sign, building, electrical, and any other permits required by the building inspector before placement of the sign. Number 6, that the messaging to be displayed in the sign would not flicker, blink, scroll, or otherwise change so frequently or be of such intense illumination that it would cause a nuisance on the surrounding properties or the public roads. Number 7, that if the operation of the sign causes any nuisances that are verified, the owner must correct those timely on notice from the village or be subject to possible instructions to remove the sign. And condition 8, compliance review at the site for any other conditions that may be in violation of past approvals or building codes, and correction of those as a condition of the sign permit.
Based on what the text says, it looks like the sign is back from the face, from the front of the building along
Technically
Janesville.
on the 164 side,
Yeah.
just right off that corner. It's
So-
interesting, because on the Janesville side, there's like that little rock wall in front of the building that sits up about a foot. You know, so, I mean, if this was like a ground sign where it's gonna be that low, then I'd say there's more of a safety issue, because you're blocking more that view of 164 there, or people walking, but since it's on a pole, that's what I was asking. So you're talking the bottom of the sign's gonna be 7 feet, top of the sign will be 10. That's at least up a bit.
And that's the idea for requiring that maximum width of pole of 8 inches, so that it
Doesn't
doesn't
obstruct
become
much.
a visual issue. I was hoping to be able to show you the Google view.
Yeah, I pulled it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Got
that's what I
that
was
up here.
using.
Let me just see if this is gonna be any more.
So it's within the triangle, but then is this, the dotted lines, is that just over 10 feet from both?
Right, the dotted line just shows a 10-foot setback from Milwaukee and a 10-foot setback from 164. So he would be within 10 feet of the Milwaukee Avenue sign and outside of the 10 feet from Highway 164. And because it's not in the right-of-way at all, no DOT approval is required.
So you're saying, you're looking, in your recommendations, you're looking for a setback?
Right.
Like a recommendation from us, but did they give us a recommend, like, I know there's the orange X, but do they have like a final X marks the spot, what the setbacks would be for their proposal?
He doesn't. I talked to Chad about that when he gave me the orange X on the map and told him that it's gonna be his job to decide what that number is going to be if the commission doesn't have one to assign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think obviously the key is to get as close to the 10 mark as much as possible, right?
Right. Which then in turn pushes him just that little bit, you know, north to obstruct that view to
Or Milwaukee.
the westbound traffic on Milwaukee.
How is the sign gonna face? Is it gonna be angled into this intersection? Is it gonna be just on 164 facing,
Slightly angled.
angled?
It's gonna be similar angle to the one that's on the building?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, correct.
So then if I have this kind of marked up correctly there, and it might be a little bit hard to see, but my little square right there, you're talking about from this lot line right here, so it's like 10, 10, and 10, correct?
Right.
So you're saying from this lot line, then
Maybe
you're only
less than
looking,
10.
you're looking about 6.5,
Right.
7 feet?
Yep, that was the
That's what they're
ballpark
at.
number I said I was reading off of. did point out in my report that the sign code does assign the planning commission as the authority to be able to modify more restrictively or less restrictively the sign code in not the code.
So if they had another, like 3 feet, this really wouldn't be an issue, is that what it's?
Still within the triangle, but yeah, at least the 10-foot setback issue
That's-
would be a
that's-
discussion topic.
Yeah,
It's more an issue of the pre-existing setback of the building, cutting off that
Yeah.
10-foot
Yeah.
by 10-foot space for them.
yeah.
I think it would still be alright because it's elevated, the height that it is.
I don't think it's gonna block up the view around that corner very much if it's 7 feet off the ground, so.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it's close to the building too, if it was out further towards 164, it'd be a different story.
Sign about 7 foot by 3 feet,
Yeah, yeah,
roughly,
exactly, yes.
roughly.
Yes.
19 square feet.
That's 6 by 3. I think it would look nice.
Well, I agree, I think with the ability to control the light at night, the dimming, because those things are pretty bright, you know,
Should right in an intersection like that.
yeah.
So what would we be looking at as far as setting those blanks for your number 1? So we could do the 10 on the 164 side, right?
Mhm.
But then on the Milwaukee Avenue side, we'd have to do something like, without having an exact number, what, 5.5 feet? Or could we squeak 6?
Chad, have you gone out there and
Measured?
measured from the right-of-way line, the property line, back from Milwaukee Avenue to tell us what exact number that
An
one X is intended to?
I was leaning more towards your suggestions. I haven't gotten an exact measurement because I wanted to find out your suggestions on it.
I think we'd have to go with probably something like 5 or 5.5 feet to give them that clearance that they want to be able to be viewed properly from both angles.
Mhm.
Just eyeballing it based on the drawing anyway.
Yeah, it looks like it's about 5, 6 feet, yeah. So at a minimum, the setback from 164 would be 10,
That one will
would
fit.
be, minimum would be 10 feet, correct? And then we just need to decide if we would approve it, what would the setback be from Milwaukee? Correct. I like your recommendation, it's like you said, about 5.5 feet. Does that sound fair enough?
I think that's pretty good. I'll make a motion to add those into the recommendation for the approval, the setback of 10 feet from the 64 side and 5.5 feet from the Milwaukee Ave side, as well as the other recommendations from the planner.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4B, review, discussion, and possible approval of an accessory storage structure that exceeds the height of the principal residence on the property and is greater than 800 square feet in area. The property owner / applicant is Jonathan and Vicki Peters. The property is located at West 227, South 8965 Marion Avenue, in the Zone R3 Residential District.
Right, so the proposed accessory structure now complies with the village's recently adopted updated code, specifically with respect to oversized accessory structures. There are two provisions that are given in the code that allow for some excess subject to planning commission review and approval. Those include, first of all, that the height of the principal building not be exceeded by the proposed accessory structure. And in this case, we're talking about a principal building on the site that's 14 feet 11 inches tall. And the proposed accessory structure would be 17 feet 7 5/8 inches tall. Okay? So the planning commission is asked to give consideration to that excess, and you are authorized to grant that exception, basically, provided you're satisfied with the details of the plan itself. And then secondly, with respect to the bonus square footage, what the code says is that on parcels greater than 40,000 square feet, accessory structures on the lot can be equal to or less than 2% of the parcel area, provided the structure is approved by the planning commission. Okay, so again, you're sent back to look at the plan details and ask yourself, do we accept the details of this plan as sufficiently motivating to cause us to want to grant an excess? So he could have up to 2% of the lot area, would be 4474 square feet, and what he's proposing is 2560 square feet. Okay? So I don't have an excess of guidance to offer you. It's very much a subjective call on the planning commission's part. What I would tell you is that from the plans that have been submitted, it's an all metal building. The roofing, the siding. It does have windows and overhead doors on both ends, so it is a drive-through type configuration. On one end, it will connect to his existing driveway that serves the principal residence. And on the other end, he's proposing a gravel drive that runs out and connects to Marianne on its own with a new culvert and driveway apron over there. The conditions that I've suggested you would consider attaching, if you do lean toward an approval in this case, might include that the deed restriction, which is required under the code, prohibiting business use of this accessory building, be signed and recorded prior to the issuance of the building permit. And secondly, that they would submit a landscaping plan for the planning commission's review and approval. And I say the planning commission's review and approval, if you decide you do want to see some landscaping installed here as a part of this project, you could defer that to staff. But that's only if you decide you would like to require some landscaping for whatever reason. Sometimes to mitigate the impacts of a large building like this in a residential district, that's a choice you can make. So really with those two conditions, I'll turn it over to the commission for discussion.
So the setback from the road is pretty much gonna be the same as the house, right?
Just slightly more,
Yeah.
yeah, which
Pretty
means
similar.
code.
The actual height difference, 2'8" and 5/8", but that building will sit lower in elevation, correct?
Where it's sitting, yes, by a lot.
Right. I thought so.
Yeah. spot, but
So it's
I'll
actually,
be back there.
it'll look lower.
From the street.
Yeah. Had you thought about doing some landscaping around it already?
I'm gonna put a row of arborvitae's all the way down the whole front of the property line.
Okay, to shield it from there.
Yeah. And they're not gonna be short ones, they're gonna be tall ones. 6 to 8 feet.
So it's a couple feet taller than the house.
Technically about one.
That's,
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the setback.
From ground elevation, it's
Yeah.
2 feet 8 and 5/8 taller than the
taller
house.
than the house.
Sure.
But if you stand out on the road, it's actually gonna.
Yeah, it's down, right.
You're gonna be about 4 feet lower from where the building sits in the house. It's 7 foot 8 inches from the garage floor to the new building height floor.
The planner's recommendation is not to use it for any type of business. What is just, what are you just using it for storage or workshop or?
Storage.
So that it won't be any business-related stuff in the building,
There won't be no business running out of the building.
not like the other building where people are going in and out with lunch boxes?
No.
Okay.
How do we feel about the landscaping requirement?
I think, I mean, obviously, that's why I asked about the arborvitae trees. I mean, that's important, but I think deferring to staff would be fine. Obviously, they would know what we're trying to achieve there as far as much shielding as possible from neighbors or roads aesthetically.
It'll be beautiful, it'll the same color as our colors of our house, if anybody's drove
That's
past
nice,
our
yeah.
house.
Did you see the
It's
colors?
gonna look
Yeah, I've
just
seen
like,
it.
it'll
Yeah.
look just like our house, so it'll be beautiful.
And you guys have been talking about this for
Long
a little
time.
while.
You know,
4 years.
Yeah. Letting us go through our code for way too long to get those changes in.
I'd make a motion to approve based on following the recommendation of the planner.
I'll second that.
And that's including the staff approval and review of the landscape design.
Yes.
Which is generally speaking a little arborvitae along Marianne Avenue side of that building, 6 to 8 foot tall at planting.
that's what I plan on doing.
Okay,
But the whole length of the whole
It'll be
property,
even our residents.
okay,
even our residents.
Wouldn't hurt.
okay. And a timeline within 6 months or earliest possible planting?
Would be this year after We Energies goes through with the power.
Okay,
I would have to wait for them because they gotta do flooring and trenching to bring it from the pole.
sure. Yeah, I can write that into a condition form and then, so.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Item 4C, review, discussion, and possible recommendation to the village board to amend sections 16.34D and 16.35D of the village code to add the use keeping of fowl on specific limited terms as a conditional use in the R1 and R2 single-family residential districts. The applicant in this matter is Charles Jarecki, West 235, South 6855, Big Bend Drive.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. So Mr. Jarecki was in front of you recently with consultation on this topic. And the commission seemed to generally favor the idea of attaching this prospective use as a conditional use into the zoning code on the narrowest terms reasonable to ensure that it doesn't become a prohibitive thing. Not that we expect there are a lot of people who want to do it, but we need to make sure that the code is clear on where, when, and how it can happen. So I really based the draft of this ordinance language on Mr. Jarecki's proposal that he had given us as a part of the consultation in terms of dimensions and quantities and things like that, and concluded that probably the best place to put it would be in the R1 and the R2 zoning districts, where an acre of land at a minimum is necessary. So any neighbors are going to be on an acre themselves at a minimum. But in this case, you would place it as a conditional use, and you would require that the applicant have at least 8 acres of land to begin with. Secondly, that the maximum height of the pen would be 15 feet. Third, that the maximum area of the pen would be 1,000 square feet. Next, that the fowl would be fully contained using proper fencing or netting in and around the pen. That the number of fowl would not exceed 12 birds per acre or 100 birds total, whichever is less. That the period for seasonal keeping would be limited to July through February of each year. That all measures would be implemented by the property owner to ensure the clean, healthy condition of the pen and the fowl at all times that they're being kept or raised. And to that end, they have to provide a written description of the proposed facilities, the manner of care, and Mr. Jarecki did do that. So you can refer to that in the next item on the agenda if you want to reference what I'm describing there. Next, that the pens would not be allowed in a wetland or a floodplain or an environmental corridor. That they would have to be accessory to an existing permitted principal use. That they would have to be located closer to the principal residence on the property than to any neighboring lot line, and in no case less than 100 feet from a neighboring lot line. Next, that there could be a requirement for landscape screening imposed by the planning commission if you felt that were necessary to mitigate any potential nuisance effects. Next, that the keeping of the birds would be for personal use and enjoyment only and not conducted as a commercial enterprise. And last, like we have in all of our conditional uses, any substantiated adverse material impacts arising out of the use can result in a revocation of the conditional use itself through the correct processes that are spelled out in the zoning code. So if the commission feels like you are willing to introduce this use to make room for, in this case, we have a one-off type request. This is done from time to time. It's not unusual to simply react to uses that you hadn't contemplated at the time the code is written. So I'll turn it over to the commission. You decide whether you want to make a recommendation to the village board to add this or not.
Is defined as fowl, like roosters and hens would be considered in that? Start getting some of the 100 roosters, that could get pretty annoying.
Mm-hmm.
So if that terminology might be used.
That opens a little bit too big of a door.
Yeah,
I would agree.
That feels like good. Look at something.
It would primarily be roosters.
Really?
But it's rooster pheasants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so they're not crowing roosters.
but like you said, what defines fowl?
Yeah.
You can consider rooster, chicken,
Yeah.
any bird that lays an egg,
Turkeys,
turkey.
get pretty loud.
Let me just see if we have that definition under chapter 12 to refer to. Fowl shall mean all domesticated birds ordinarily considered to be edible, including pigeons.
Oh,
Yummy.
I was gonna say, I've been pigeon before.
The depression all over again.
I was just gonna say, you just haven't been hungry enough.
Yeah, I think we'd wanna change that verbiage and not be so open on that type of bird.
To go to pheasants only?
Or upland game birds, non-crowing.
Is that possible?
And that would be because in a typical, you would maybe have pheasants and a bird, a chucker. Because they're used also.
Right, right.
Even maybe some, I wouldn't expect me, but in the future, somebody could be raising quail.
Or grouse and quail.
Nah, partridge you don't raise those in captivity.
They
But
don't-
pheasants,
Okay,
chuckers, and bob whites are what you can get from the game farms, the suppliers. McFarland is the world's largest supplier. They're in, I think, Racine County, in the world, so. But it would be pheasants. It would possibly, if you would get a good deal on chuckers, it would maybe be some chuckers. I wouldn't expect that, and then not quail, but in the future, somebody could raise quail for pointing dog applications more so.
pheasant, chucker, bobwhite, and quail.
Bob White is a quail, Bob White quail.
Okay.
Yep, but those three would be the birds that would typically be in a,
Captivity like this.
right, exactly.
Yeah, I think if anything, we'd spell those out specifically.
Mhm.
And again, we've already, through the other conversations we've had around this, we've already helped minimize the likelihood of something like this as a restriction of the size, 8-acre parcel, minimum, so.
Great.
That helped reduce the chances of us seeing a whole lot of these requests all over the place, since it is in R1 and R2, but yeah, I think replacing the foul language with the, those three specific would be safer. So we don't get a bunch of turkeys.
Do we have any like neighboring community language that we compare to? Not really.
We had neighboring language to compare to when we wrote the ordinance language about the chickens, so we relied on that. But I've never seen keeping of upland, raising and keeping of upland birds.
Imagine the
Specifically
closest
provided for.
facility would be Warren Valley, which is out on Highway D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it considered Genesee or no? Where is that considered?
I would
Wales?
guess that
Somewhere
might
in
be
there?
Genesee.
Wales or Genesee?
But that's a big, large
Oh,
commercial.
Yeah.
They probably raise 25,000,
Yeah.
if not maybe more, of their own, plus what they buy. So,
Right. The idea, I think, is that you need to, we talked about this originally, is could you
correct.
get that agricultural overlay? And if he had had 10 acres, he could have asked for the ag overlay to be zoned onto his property, which would have permitted this. So I think the idea is from this stage up, you have to get that extra acreage and become agricultural to have any bigger
The other options.
operation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I can make a motion to recommend to the village board, with the specific file spelled out.
The three different ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? We can include hen chickens too, or not?
I think chickens is pretty well addressed or
Okay.
in the code, so
All right, good.
I wouldn't,
And
Making sure, right?
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Why don't you hang on just 1 minute yet, because your next item is the conditional use.
Oh, okay, sure.
Item 4D, review, discussion, and possible action to schedule a joint public hearing with the village board on the conditional use grant request of applicant/property owner Charles Jarecki to build a pen and raise/keep pheasant from late summer through late winter on his 8.94 acre parcel of land, which is zoned R2 residential district. The property is located at West 235, South 6855 Big Bend Drive.
Right, so this is the actual request for the conditional use permit. And like I said, I modeled the language off of Mr. Jarecki's submittal from the previous meeting. And I can tell you that he is fully compliant with the proposed terms of the new ordinance. And so I would not have any objection to a recommendation to approve his conditional use grant request, but it should be subject to the issuance of a building permit and electrical permit if there's going to be any electrical service to the pen prior to construction of the pen. And also subject to the village board also approving the proposed new language and making that a final part of the ordinance, of the village's zoning ordinance. So subject to those conditions, I wouldn't have any issue.
same motion then, to recommend the village board conditional use permit for trailer parking
I'll second.
with the, planner's recommendations and specifically changing that to the type of birds allowed there. I assume that's part of it.
Any further discussion?
Just a question, that conditional use, does that involve any kind of public hearing or neighbor notification then?
It does, so that's the other part of this item, is to actually schedule the joint public hearing between the planning commission and the village board. And we would also conduct that public hearing for the benefit of the previous item to rezone, to change the zoning code. So if there's a date that everybody has in mind that would be convenient for both the board and the commissioners to be together, it could be at the next planning commission meeting, a half hour ahead.
I don't know, does that get out there in the paper?
Class 2 notice.
Which is how long is notice? 30 days? No.
No, 2 publications, not less than 7 days.
That's what I was trying to remember what the timeline was. Okay. Yeah, so even if it waited till after the board meeting, we'd still have time to catch the next planning. Is that the end of June? I would be trying that week.
June 24th.
Yeah. I wouldn't be in attendance probably, but 100% booked it. You still should get a quorum, obviously.
Could you get a quorum of commissioners at the next board meeting?
Next board meeting is next week.
You're saying one
Oh,
after
no,
that?
no, this time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one after that would be July 1st.
Can we do that?
Then he's clear to even have his conditional use potentially approved at the July planning commission. If the ordinance changes are made.
Sure. What was the timeline? When was he looking to try to do this?
Fellows would, depend upon when you get them, would be dependent on the size, and then there would probably be price breaks in between there. But like July, she had put in there July, and then the last of the birds would probably be gone by the 1st of March.
Okay, so the period July through February.
February
is
was what you
acceptable.
had put on there, and that probably would be pretty accurate.
Okay, should it be wider than that?
It would only be depending on the weather in March, but you can actually hunt them until April 15th. You, as a rule, don't. Most all of the clubs close like the 1st of April is the last day, because the weather starts to get, and there's other things. The roosters start really raising havoc because that's the start of their mating season. So if you have them together, then they'll pick on each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So usually by the end of March, you're completely done. But if you get a break in the weather, it's nice hunting conditions in March to use them. So.
So, would we like to retroactively change that language, or would we like to bring that up to the board and see if they would change that language to include the month of March as the period for seasonal keeping? I guess procedurally, the action's already complete, so it's really, although I think on the same evening, someone who voted in the majority can move to
Amend the motion.
reopen the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We decided it was gonna be July 1st, right?
If our quorum of this this body can meet, 15 minutes before the board meeting on July 1st. 15 minutes.
Do you think? We got public hearings?
Yeah.
Let's do a half hour, like 6:30, yeah, 6:30.
Not a bad idea.
Settle on the first there.
Yeah.
So do we need to go back and address that verbiage related to seasonal timing?
Or that can be brought up as part of the board's discussion and action.
Let's do that, let's push that up.
Yep.
Now you're free to leave.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Item 4E, turn the page and saw another 4.
Yeah.
Review, discussion, possible action on the site plan / plan of operations amendment request of Chad Hodak doing business as Reaction Tackle and Storage to install a 6-foot tall security privacy fence along the north and west lot lines with a gate tying back to the southwest corner of the building and to park / store boats and dumpsters within the fenced area. Property is located at South 86, West 22400 Edgewood Avenue. It is zoned I-1 Light Industrial District. The property owner is Hodak Real Estate LLC.
Right, so this is pretty straightforward. Chad and his wife have now taken up occupancy over there with their fiber business and with their boat storage business, including office elements attendant to both of those and a retail portion attendant to both of those. And at this point, what they'd like to do is install this fence, 6 feet tall, opaque. You can't see through it because they would put slats in it, all the way along the north lot line and all the way along the west lot line, coming down to the southwest corner of the building and then tying back with a gate. And within that area, they would like to store their dumpsters so that they're still out of the public view, provided that gate is kept closed for the most part. And then also park and store boats outdoors in that area. And so from a code standpoint, this is allowed. He can have that fence right up to, and the way he proposes it, an inch off of the lot line. The other elements of the code requirements are all met. The storage is enclosed. The storage yard can be approved in the side yard by the planning commission. My biggest concern was how would the fire department feel about the access to the west side of the building and the north side of the building being restricted by 2 things. One is the gating, and the second would be the parked boats. And I did ask Bill Gaunt to kind of take a look at the plan from that perspective, and I'll let Bill speak for himself, but on your review of that, Bill. But I had a number of conditions that I would recommend you would consider attaching if you're inclined toward approving this modest expansion of the use to include the outdoor element. Then the other thing that they are asking for approval on is to replace, the signs are gone now, the pre-existing signs, but they would like to install in their place 2 new signs. The first, I would tell you that code permits up to 1 wall sign per street frontage. Each of those can be up to 40 square feet in the area. So the sign on the east building wall would have been considered legal non-conforming, the one that was there, because it doesn't technically front on a street. It's got that kind of funny extension of Edgewood Avenue until it reaches Milwaukee Avenue. It's a little bit of a tangent there, but I can understand why you would consider that a street frontage if the commission is inclined to approve that east wall sign. And then also on the south side of the building, they would be permitted that 40 square feet of wall signage as well. So subject to them submitting the final details of those signs in the form of a sign permit application to the building inspector. I didn't raise any issues of concern with those changes. The conditions I had suggested would include the village building inspector and fire safety inspection of the site for compliance with all building codes and past approvals, and anything that's not according to Hoyle has to be corrected before the changes could be implemented as to the site plan. That the existing and proposed refuse containers would be at all times stored out in public view, either behind that fence or behind the building if you don't put the fence in. Number 3, that the completion of the fencing and the gate be done before you would park or store any boats outdoors on the site. Number 4, village fire chief and inspector to review and approve the proposed fencing location as it relates to their village fire chief and fire inspector to review this as it relates to their ability to provide fire services to the building. Number 5, planning commission determination as to the replacement of the existing signs as proposed. And number 6, future use of the building or site, whether by the property owner or any others, not expressly referred to and delimited above and in the past approval is not allowed. So it's the kind of thing where we don't want to just let, continuous offshoots or outgrowths of businesses evolve without some oversight. So I'll turn it over to the commission for discussion. Bill might have some comments on the fire safety side.
Okay, no, I think it seems to be okay, but I just looked it over here, what's her other plan? The gate can be open, or we can get accessibility to it, there's an aisleway to get into it, or all the way around. So we should not really have any problems. And there's two different exits into that building beside, if we have to get in. So, normally, sometimes, once in a while, we go to the side of a building, we make our own walkway, our own entryway. Some things might be necessary, but this should not be a problem.
I did want to point out that there's an easement, a Wetco easement on the north side of the property. The exact location of it, I don't know, but I want to make clear for the commission, like I did tell the property owner, that the village's approval of sign plans, for instance, or accessory building plans, things like that, is a village approval, and it does not exempt the property owners from understanding what easements there are on their property and living within the limits of whatever those easements describe the limitations to be. Sometimes in Wepco's easements, for instance, they don't allow planting of trees that are going to get real tall. Sometimes in the case of drainage easements, they don't allow the construction of buildings. So those are important things for everybody to know about, but understand that the village's approval of plans like this does not, it's simply a village approval, it's not an exemption from abiding by the easements.
Cyber CNC's got 3 signs on the building, 2 on the Edgewood side and 1 on East End.
Yeah.
Right. Are they looking to just put up 2 signs or?
Well, no, they did put up a fiber sign here.
Right above the door?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got that approved in the original to have 1 sign put up. We didn't know what we were gonna do, otherwise we would have brought up all 3 of them originally.
Yeah.
It's currently a temporary, and when we have the drawings from the sign company, we can submit those.
Well, no, that one.
I mean, it's being replaced basically what it was, so.
Okay.
Different.
That's the assumption I'm running with.
Yeah.
That you're doing
Different
2
work.
signs on the south
Mhm.
and 1 sign on the east.
Yeah.
You just had some landscaping done too on the front, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that, we guys were working for a couple days, looked good.
Yeah, thanks.
What's the current cover all around the building? Is it gravel all the way around? Or is there
I thought there was grass on one side, isn't there?
Yeah, it's, the driveway comes around the back a little bit, and then it kind of gets buried underneath, gravel and grass mixture, but
You
it's
plan
mainly.
on blacktopping for the
Yes.
boats, or?
Yeah, there's blacktop coming all the way around the north side for a few feet, and then it kind of tapers off, right, kind of right where I have the boats drawn on the plan.
Okay.
And then we might put more boats a little bit further in the grass, but I think I had 25 drawn on the plan, that's probably what we're gonna stick with.
I'm not familiar with the backside of the building, can the backside be seen by Gainesville?
No.
I
No,
don't think so.
it can really only be seen from the property to the
But,
north.
yeah, from the electric power company,
Yeah.
where everything.
Bill just asked about the trees on the north side, those are ours, right? No.
One thing I would like to bring up when I went out there for their occupancy is the other tenant has throughout the years when that was abandoned or however long it's taken, has kind of taken over probably 7 or 8 feet onto they have a hard survey, and I know there's gonna be concern when he gets in there and pushes, and it's all like.
Putting a fence in?
Right, so that was one of the reasons I spoke with Mary on this, and it helped him because he wanted to add storage and stuff, but I was already getting issues with the other tenant, and he's got the survey, so it's a no-brainer. But what is I know you're gonna come in there with a blade of some sort and just kind of reestablish your lot line, right, or?
We're just gonna take out the asphalt that was dumped, we're not gonna be changing any grades.
Okay, because I know he sits a little higher than you do,
Yeah.
but so your fence is gonna start down low or whatever, and then just go up 6 feet, and you just kind of slope back his.
Yeah, it'll slope back, yeah.
Okay.
Just
All right.
follow, you're just gonna follow the natural grade that's already there for your lot.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Okay.
Then you got the trees in the back too, they could have to do some, trim them off a little bit more.
Yes, and most of them are dead already.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, a few of them are falling over.
Those are all scrub trees.
Oh, for the most part.
There's nothing coming up.
Even though the fire chief stated everything's in good order, if we would make a motion to approve, we keep that verbiage in there as far as the site review, things like that.
Doesn't hurt.
I think it's good to keep that in there.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan of operations amendment for reaction tackle with the planner's recommendations.
I'll second it.
We're not addressing the sign issue right now, right?
It's part of the.
It was part of this.
Yeah, I see it in
To
there.
be able to replace both those signs,
Yeah.
so they get,
We're gonna consider the
they get,
east side of the building road facing, correct?
I think so.
Okay. Just making sure we're clear.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, planners report for April, May 2021. Mary?
Let's see. James Raymond got an approval from you to construct an 800 square foot accessory building over on Rosemary Drive. He has decided to put that on hold temporarily. I think he's watching
Construction.
lumber
Lumber
prices.
prices, yeah.
Right. Ed and Sue Rack also got an approval from you for a structure exceeding 800 square feet up on Cherry Avenue. And I believe they are going forward.
They are in the process of getting their deed restriction certified through the county, so I will be issuing that next week sometime.
Good.
Take a step back with this James Raymond approval, do we put a time frame on that?
Well, an approval is good for 12 months.
All right.
Yeah, and they go cold or stale after that. Have to come
All right.
back.
So they have to go through the whole process again?
They do,
Okay, that's something I didn't know.
yep. And I believe I told them that.
Okay,
He called me and asked me.
okay, good.
Update with respect to the Lake Park storage condos. The very trailing details of the documents are kind of coming together. I would estimate maybe as soon as next week, everything that needs to be recorded will be, and they'll be in a position to pull the trigger on site.
Just tell me that no report. I gotta go.
Signs are up.
Please, Bill.
Yeah, sell signs.
Naomi, do you have anything to add on that?
No, yeah, we're waiting for our letter of credit and the signed developers agreement, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, and as soon as that is then they, I've talked to Jason, they're still getting their septic and water permits, well permits. So, they could start grading, that none of that work can be done until they get, and that goes along with the building permit. So we're keeping in contact on what's happening out there.
What they're allowed to do and what they're not at this
Right.
point.
And so, yeah, I'm gonna be gone on vacation next week, so if they were to do a pre-con, we have our inspectors that will be available to come
I don't
over.
think you get that gradation, it's all.
Halfway up
That's
the
all.
door right now.
She's really not here.
She's already bagged.
Home here. It's a mirage. Yeah, so I know they're anxious to get going, so I hope they can get started.
The other item was update on the street light. I know last month I had told you that a developer, Steve Stiza, had said that he was willing to go ahead and install that street light if the village desires it. So I don't know if anyone has doubled back to him to.
I talked to Eric about it, because
Steve is right here.
Oh.
too. I was being a little sarcastic.
I was sorry, but I did tell Eric that that was what we discussed, and
Okay.
that he was to make contact, because he was gonna work with
Sure.
you on.
Who's there?
Eric Feddersen.
Okay.
DPW.
DPW, right.
Yeah,
So then the other thing I had is, that I didn't get it on the agenda because the call came this week, is somebody who's interested in buying that muffler shop on the corner here. And in our new zoning code for the B1 zoning district, we took out automotive service and repair businesses as uses by right and conditional uses, which means that those that are pre-existing will continue in their conditional use grant formats, but once they go out of commission, they'll be gone for good. So the individual who holds the conditional use permit for the muffler shop use has gone out of business now, but they get 12 months of downtime before the conditional use goes void. And we have somebody who would like to sort of step in and take over that operation with a very similar operation. And the question I told them I would bounce off you is whether you are comfortable with the idea that we would come forward with a conditional use grant request to amend the existing conditional use and attach a new owner's name and possibly modify a few of the conditions and allow that use or a very similar use to it to continue there. So that's the question for the commission. The idea in taking those out of the B1 district was an expressed desire, I think, on the commission's part, not to see that use proliferate throughout this in-village area proper. And the idea behind legal non-conforming uses is that they should eventually disappear. It's not intended that legal non-conforming uses should be carried on forever. Yet at the same time, I don't want to make that decision for the village. I want the commission to weigh in on on how you'd like to handle that.
That's something we're laying out tonight, or that's the agenda thing for next month? I mean, at this point, you're kind of giving like, almost like a correspondence, right?
I
Because
am.
it's not an agenda item.
Yep.
So we can't necessarily
Just consider it.
debate, it's something to sleep on and we'll have to formally put it on. My take on it.
'Cause he was gonna use that, Mary, as like a detail shop and kind of maybe put a couple cars out there and possibly sell them, right? 'Cause I took the same call.
He's a classic car guy.
Okay, that's what I got
And
out
he
of
would
it.
like to be able to do, you know,
Right.
engine work for people,
But also have a few for sale in the front, right?
and also have a
Okay.
few for sale.
All right, I just,
Actually, just a couple, I think he said.
right, 8 or so, yeah, he had a number on it, but I've been getting a few calls for that residence or for that property, and it's everybody's car, it's always car minded,
Sure.
so.
Makes sense,
yeah.
that's what's been there.
I had kind of a floral shop farmer's market call on there. I thought that would be a, you know, as a retail enterprise where you swing open the overhead doors and the farmer's market,
Be
the
kinda neat.
florist is in there.
Nice change of pace.
Yeah, it would have been a nice change of pace. I haven't heard back from them.
Like malt shop, custard cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
More?
So, as long as we're talking about that building, does anybody know where that building sits with, where those tanks were removed?
They were removed and it was mitigated.
Mitigated
Yeah.
remediation.
So
It
is
was
there-
done with the super pump.
Right, and when the state went
Yeah,
through and
yeah,
did that in
did
the
it all,
nineties or
yeah.
whatever?
Yeah, it is.
So is there paperwork somewhere on that, or is there anything attached to that property stating that? Because that's a concern for a lot of people buying that,
I'm sure
obviously.
that it is.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so I just,
Somewhere.
Yeah. It
And it was
should be
done by-
available on
it
that
was done with the
Superfund
super pump,
site. It
yeah.
should be
okay,
on-
alright, because I've got a couple people
available
ask
on-
me, and I'm like, I wanna say it was, but I don't, you know, they're gonna spend close to, you know, what do they want for that place, whatever. And, you know, that's a big concern, because to have those removed after the fact is,
A bit of cost.
Yeah, it's all been done.
Yeah,
okay.
It's on the DNR's website.
that's what I meant.
You just click on it and it'll open up the file, and it'll give you the report.
Cool.
Okay.
There you go.
So that's all I have. Nothing else to report.
Thank you. Fire inspector's report.
He said he had none.
Right.
Guess he jetted out.
Building inspector's report. Jason.
Okay, so we have a good old fashioned fence dispute war going on in the corner of Milwaukee and St. Joe's. That is hopefully coming to the end, but I've been spending quite a bit of time on that. We have an abandoned house complaint that I've been working with Kelly and Laura on over on Putnam Street. Neighbor complained, grass hasn't been cut all season long, there's debris in the corner. There's a shared driveway with the other neighbor, so I did drive in there without trespassing, obviously. It's in quite a bit of disarray. So it's in a estate holding, so we did fire off a letter to them with their violations, but we Googled the lady, she's 80-some years old, so I don't know where we're gonna get with that. But that's in the works. Soil erosion problem in Lake Park area, but miraculously I was about to start issuing a fine and a soil fence went up today, this afternoon, so crisis averted.
Only taking a year.
Yeah, I just got involved 2 weeks ago.
I know.
So, and then the vacant building across, that's for sale across from the muffler shop, I had a complaint that somebody was running a business out of there. I was able to make contact with the person who hangs out there from time to time, and was able to get in there. I found no evidence of anybody running a business. It was a small computer. I don't know what he does in there, but there were no real tools or anything in there, and he informed me that there's not even running water in the building, so whatever he's doing in there is not anything that I could find of any type of serving the public or any type of stuff like that. And then I was also involved with Hodak Storage, the resident, the owner behind him was concerned about the possible fence. So I've been in contact with him, but now that we're backing it with plan commission approval, that's gonna pretty much silence that. So that, what's that?
I said it's within the rules.
Yeah, well, no, and it, cause, you know, he was talking eminent domain, like that's land is his now, and it was getting kinda silly, so, but yeah, so that's what I got.
Very good, thank you.
Sounds like you've been busy.
Yeah, last month nothing, and all of a sudden watch what you wish for.
Yeah, right.
Item 7, engineers report. Naomi?
Update on Whipple Brook East, I just got a resubmittal of the subdivision plans, today actually, so they'll be on my list to review after vacation. Still hopeful. And then, Douglas Court Development, you know, we thought they were gonna get out there right after our pre-con in April, and there's still been no work. I called Mr. Khan to inquire about the status of the project, and he said they're waiting on materials, and the materials are like 120 feet of pipe. So I called Ferguson, a pipe distribution company. They happen to have just about only that. So I called the contractor at Andy at BRT Trucking. BRT is doing the work, and, you know, asked him if, how's it going? Well, we can't get the materials. They said, well, I just called Ferguson, they have some come today. And he said, well, I don't have an account here. So I said, well, you know, we gotta get this going. Who are you trying to go through? They're trying to go through, Western, it's another supply. So he was gonna check on it and he was gonna get back to me, so I haven't heard. But, yeah, we need to move forward. We're now, you know, it's gonna be June, it's gonna be July.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, the weather's been very.
And your
It's
foundation.
been
Could
awesome.
have been great
Weather.
done by now.
Yeah, I mean, he said,
Now you
yeah, I
can
know,
run the weather.
yeah, when we get the materials, we can have it done in 2 days. Well, I don't disagree with you, but I think you can get the materials. So, you know, there's maybe, next month, Plan Commission will have some, maybe enforcement action to consider. Conwell's Development, they are, the last inspection I think is in your packet.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's two, yeah, I kind of got them up late, but, they're looking pretty good. They have some areas of erosion, just right at the outfall pipe where the erosion mat, TRM mat underneath the riprap had, not been extended far enough. So they were gonna fix that up. I advised them to fix that up, and there was one other area near the pond. And then to call DNR for a final inspection for their notice of termination on their NOI. So I think they're doing pretty good out there. We did discuss the maintenance issues with infiltration basin that was existing between their property and the other property to the north. You know, I asked for a plan. When are we going to complete that? Kind of give them the indication that if they had a plan, we could work with the timeline. The timeline was May 31st for them to complete that. They've been really good to work with, getting the rest of their site compliant. And when I talked to Dan Madden, the representative for Conwell's, he said, oh no, I think we want to get this done this year and get it going. So I did talk to their Jeff at Custom Grading, their contractor, about what needs to be going out there for that infiltration basin maintenance of it. So while the deadline where we wanted to see some work on that finished, they are still have some areas to touch up on their site. So, and they've been responsive, and I think that basin downstream has functioned better because of their 2 ponds upstream. So have not given up on that, have not, but we're still working with them for them to understand what needs to be done. That covers. Couple things in for review, but that's about it.
Thank you. correspondence?
Is Steve here for something specific, or just, in case?
Why do you
there's
have the update?
Yep.
It's great.
Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So the fire chief said no. He told me to report to you guys, there's nothing. One month. I forgot that.
Just before we adjourn, do we have a date set for next month?
It's always that fourth Thursday, so what do we say, the
It's always the
25th?
fourth Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
20,
Why do I keep thinking it's the third?
no.
24th is planning, and then the first would be the joint public hearings.
Who seconded that adjournment?
Nobody.
Nobody yet.
I will.
Very good. Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.
So no concerns there, Steve, on that streetlight?
It doesn't matter to me.
Well, I'm gonna give
Hey,
Eric.
I'll just, you want me to just put it up, I'll put it up.
There's been a whole lot of discussion on it. It'd be nice just to be done with it.
I mean, I was just waiting for direction. So.
Outside shields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just
Help
rivet
direct
them on, basically.
I would
That's
love,
what we've done that on our projects abut residential.
Here.
Maybe the library.
That'll help with that one resident.
Usually it's like a drop down like that. Then you just rivet them in.
I'd love to send Eric a reminder to get us in touch with